All right, let's talk about HAARP. You've probably heard the name. It's this research facility way out in Alaska that, according to the internet, is responsible for, well, pretty much everything. So, the big question we're diving into is, what's the real story? Is this thing a super secret weapon, or is it just a fancy science project? I mean, we're talking about claims that it can literally create and steer giant hurricanes. And it doesn't stop there. Some people are convinced it's a tectonic weapon that can trigger devastating earthquakes on command. And then there's the big one, mind control. The idea that its invisible waves can somehow control what we think and do on a massive scale. Wild stuff, right? Okay, so how are we going to sort through all this? Well, here's the plan. First, we'll look at the official story, what HAARP is supposed to be. Then we'll get into the wild accusations. After that, we'll see what the actual science says, figure out where these crazy stories even came from, and wrap up with why this whole debate is actually a pretty big deal. All right, first things first, let's get the official story. What do the people who actually work there say this thing is? So, HAARP, it's a mouthful. It stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Basically, it's a science lab, but its laboratory is the ionosphere, a layer of our atmosphere way, way up there. So, since 2015, it's been run by the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And what they do is use this giant grid of 180 antennas to poke and prod the ionosphere. They're trying to figure out how stuff from the sun, like solar particles, affects us here on Earth. The whole point is to make things like our GPS and radio communications more reliable, and also to get a better handle on cool stuff like the aurora borealis. Okay, so that's the science textbook version. Now, let's get into the stuff you see on the internet. What are these specific disasters people are pointing their fingers at HAARP for? You know, it's almost immediate. Whenever a major disaster strikes, you can bet that within hours, HAARP will be trending online. I mean, take the tragic earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Tweets blaming HAARP just exploded. It's gotten so wild that people are even blaming it for things that haven't happened yet, like a theoretical hurricane years from now. And the claims are huge, right? We're talking about everything from weaponized weather, creating floods and droughts, to tectonic warfare, causing earthquakes, and then you get the really out there stuff, like mass mind control or even bringing down planes like TWA 800. Okay, so you've heard the accusations. Now what's the comeback from the scientific community? How do they debunk all this? This is probably the most important point when it comes to weather. The radio waves HAARP sends out, they're on a completely different channel, so to speak, than the parts of the atmosphere that make our weather. They just pass straight through without interacting. It's like trying to grab a ghost. There's just nothing there to grab onto. Yeah, exactly. Professor Matthew Zettergren has this great analogy. He says it's like shining a flashlight through a window. The light goes right through to the other side, but the window itself doesn't move or heat up. The energy just isn't being absorbed by the thing it would need to affect. And then there's the question of pure power. Even if HAARP could affect the weather, its energy output is, well, it's tiny. A Stanford professor pointed out that it's just a minuscule fraction of the power in a single bolt of lightning. And to really hammer that home, think about this. Between 50 and 100 lightning flashes hit our planet every single second. So, compared to the sheer, non-stop energy that nature throws around, HAARP's output is like a drop in the ocean. It's not even a contest. Now, to be fair, we do have some very basic weather modification technology, like cloud seeding, but its power is super limited. We're talking about maybe boosting rainfall from an existing storm by about 15%. That's a universe away from the claim that HAARP can cook up a hurricane out of thin air. And what about the other stuff? Earthquakes? Well, scientists say it's physically impossible. The Turkey quake, for example, started 18 kilometers deep inside the Earth on a known fault line. No technology we have can influence that. And mind control? The frequencies are all wrong. Your brain works on super low frequencies. HAARP is super high. Plus, the waves are 100 times weaker than the ones coming from your cell phone. So, okay, if the science is so cut and dry, why won't these theories go away? What's feeding them? It seems to be a perfect storm, really. You had some controversial patents for weather modification that got people thinking. Then you had some early political panic from the European Parliament, which was based on some bad info. And you mix all that with the fact that it's a mysterious-looking place in a remote location that used to be run by the military, and boom, you've got the perfect recipe for a conspiracy theory. But here's the thing. This isn't just fun and games on internet forums. This stuff has real and sometimes dangerous consequences in the real world. I mean, it can lead to actual planned violence. Back in 2016, 2 men were arrested with a whole arsenal of weapons. Their plan? To destroy the HAARP facility because they believed it was trapping souls. And even beyond that terrifying possibility, this kind of misinformation just chips away at our trust in science. It distracts everyone from focusing on the real environmental problems we need to solve, like climate change. At the end of the day, the experts, the people at places like NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they couldn't be clearer. They state flat out that there is no technology on Earth that can create or steer or modify a hurricane. Which really brings us to the final and maybe most important question. In a world overflowing with information, when we're faced with something that's complicated and maybe a little scary, how do we draw the line between what's actually possible and what's just a good story?